All right. Welcome to Inside the Markets, the official StockPulse podcast, where we try to keep track of the equities markets. Got with me today, David Erfle. He runs the JuniorMinerJunky website. David, appreciate you spending some time with me here. And mining's at certainly an interesting time here. Gold's at a nice level. Who better to run through the waterfront of the health of junior mining? So why don't you give us the 36,000 view of how you see the junior mining sector?
Oh wow, that's a pretty huge question. How I see the sector right now as it's a fantastic place to invest because even though the gold price has broken out above 1,400 after consolidating below that level for about 6 years and building a very strong base, the generalist investor has yet to delve into the junior universe here. You know, if you're a generalist investor, you've been investing in the GDX, the GDXJ, which is not juniors, by the way. The GDXJ should be renamed GDXM because it's mostly mid-tiers. It's smattered with some juniors. So they've been buying ETFs, you know, GDX, GDXJ, GLD, and they've yet to come into the junior sector.
Yeah. So how does there's a big merger here. I heard you talk about it here the other day. Why don't you kind of break down the finer points? Does this signal anything to how business is being done, or?
Well, I don't see the merger that happened this week with Cisco taking over Barkerville as a real positive. Sure, it's positive in the fact that it is a merger. It is an acquisition. You know, it does bring a little attention to the sector. But as far as the actual transaction, it wasn't very accretive to legacy shareholders. I mean, if I was a legacy shareholder of Barkerville Gold, I wouldn't have been very happy with the news. The stock was diluted into oblivion, and Cisco, who already owned a huge chunk, just pretty much took it over for very cheap. And I don't know what they're going to do with it because they're not a mining company; they're a royalty company. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here.
Yeah, absolutely. And talk about those legacy shareholders pulling back here. Why I asked mainly about the health of the sector is. They've got a real problem here, I think, junior mining, attracting new shareholders. You've got a decade or more of burnout shareholders that have heard it all. A lot of these guys are running lifestyle companies. How do you weed through these? Obviously, with your advice, but what are you looking for out there? What's going to float David Erfle's boat?
Yeah, you know, that's pretty much what I love about this sector, Rob, because you know you really have to do your homework. You really have to go to these conferences. You have to talk to these management teams. You have to look them in the eye. You have to go over their background. You have to make sure that there's not there's no shadiness attached with any of their backgrounds. You have to make sure that they have access to capital because right now it's a bull market for some of the juniors and the majors and the mid-tiers, but for a lot of the smaller juniors, it's still a bear market, the ones that are trying to raise money. So you really, like I said, you really have to do your homework. And that's why there's so much there's so much potential for outsized gains in this sector, because let's face it, I'd say 85 to 90% of these juniors aren't worth investing in. So when you find one that is, it has the potential to have, you know, a 5 to 10 bagger in a year or so. So that's what really gets my juices flowing through the sector, because you, like I said, you really have to do your homework. But once you do and you get a hold of one or two of them, you could do very well.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen that over the years. Aurelian's a great case back in the day. Made some millionaires overnight. Let's talk about this trickle down. You talk about this bear market. It's a great point. And I talk to CEOs all day long, and some of them are flying high, and some of them are. It's like they're on the other side of the storm. When does this all come together? When does this trickle down happen? Is there any triggers to this, or is this just a goal just needs to sustain these levels?
I think the last point you made there, that gold needs to sustain these levels, Rob, because you got to understand that we were in a bear market for so long, from 2011 to late 2015, where the GDX went down 84%. So a lot of people lost a lot of money. And then when you had the 6-month short cover induced pop in January of 2016, the capital markets came in full bore, and a lot of them got burned. So now they're being extra cautious. They're making sure that this breakout is sustained, I feel, for at least 2 quarters. We're getting towards the end of the third quarter here, and you're about to see quarterly financials come out at the end of October, and they're going to be very good. So if we can sustain that for another quarter, I think the capital markets open up their purse strings a little more in January of 2020, because let's face it, that's when the sector really starts to heat up anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I call that the Missouri market, show me. And I think that's how this will play out. Just too much pain before. Let's talk about the conditions. It seems pretty set up for these guys. Again, gold's holding a good level here. The Fed looks like they're positioned to be cutting rates, diluting money. The dollar runs. I don't understand how gold and the dollar run, but at some point I think the rubber will meet the road. How do you see the conditions playing out? Should be a ripe environment for these guys heading forward.
Oh, absolutely. And the dollar is running because it's the best horse in the glue factory. The U.S. economy is pretty much running the entire show here. And everybody needs dollars. All this debt in emerging markets are just denominated in dollars. So as a matter of fact, there's more $100 bills out in circulation now than there is $1 bills. And most of those bills are overseas. So what you're going to see here, Rob, I believe, is you're going to see safe haven capital continue to go into blue chip U.S. stocks, the U.S. dollar, and gold simultaneously.
Wow. So what, obviously, we've kind of made a stake here in the equities markets. You can argue how to play these, and you've already touched on it that we should have a move. Talk a little bit about some of the destruction that's been done in the sector with dilution and all that. Will it matter in the overall scheme of things if there's no money really coming into the sector from the U.S. Certainly, once people start to get wind of that, will it matter? Will all that damage matter? We'll all just get out of this okay?
It's all about the gold price, Rob. As long as if the gold price can maintain a 15 handle here into the end of the year, I think which is kind of doubtful here, because I see a correction happening here. I mean, it's gone too far, kind of too fast, and it's gotten a little overextended. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that 1450 area tested. That wouldn't shock me. And but as long as we could sustain that breakout level of 1400, that's all I'm concerned about as an investor in junior miners, because most of these companies that I like, that I follow, or that I invest in, their projects are make money above 1400 gold. So as long as we can maintain that level, I think you're going to start to see capital coming into this sector, because they got to believe in the breakout. There's that 1400 level, that 1375 level was tested so many times during that consolidation process and fell back down, that it's just a trust issue. Once they trust this breakout, then the purse strings are going to start to loosen up.
Yeah, speaking of the trust issue, why don't you talk a little bit about what you're doing here? I know you're in this thing to the end. It sounds like you're fond of the sector. I agree with you. There's a lot of value. Makes sense to have gold. Let's talk a little bit about geopolitics and about how they influence how you look at things. And does that come into play at all, or are you pretty much just a fundamentalist and it's all about really the metals? And another question too: are you a fan of silver or gold? What's your favorite?
Well, of course, I love silver, because once you get a bull market in the precious metals, silver, outpaces gold. I mean, silver usually lags gold, and it did this time. But once it gets going, it outpaces gold as far as percentage gains to the upside. But the downside of silver is there's not a lot of juniors that you can invest in. I mean, there's a lot to choose from, but most of them I wouldn't invest in. So I do have a basket of silver juniors that I've been accumulating before the breakout happened here. But as far as your question about geopolitics, I mean, sure, it will influence the gold price both ways, but I think it's mostly about economics. It's mostly about these central banks debasing their currencies. It's mostly about investors losing faith in central banks and their currencies. It's mostly about investors losing faith in government in particular. Like I said, as long as the gold price remains above 1,400, I'm happy.
Yeah. Okay, before we wrap up here, why don't you talk a little bit about your opportunity over there and what you're doing? I know a novice investor cannot possibly navigate this maze of junior mining without some help. So why don't you give them a little advice here and tell them how they can follow you?
Yeah, it's a difficult maze to go through for sure. And I started my service in April of 2017. It's called JuniorMinerJunky, and I only have a few spaces left. I've capped it at 250 members because I give my subscribers a 24-hour heads up before I buy anything. I write up a report, I send it out, and we all try to get in it at the same time. So in order to do that, I have to limit my subscriber base. And you can find me at JuniorMinerJunky with a Y.com. And I also write a weekly column for Kitco, which comes out on Friday mornings.
Excellent. Okay, we'll look forward to having you back. That's David Erfle, JuniorMinerJunky.com. Hey, David, appreciate the time.
Always great talking to you, Rob. Thanks.